our first segment tonight is with two amazing people, Father Pfleger and Christian Scott aTunde Adjuah. Thank you both so much for joining us here on the Tightrope. We're thrilled to have you both, incredibly inspiring people. So let's Cornel, I'm going to let you take it away here because you know both of these gentlemen very well, and I'll add a couple of comments here and there. But why don't we turn it over to you?
Oh, we've got two magnificent love warriors. I'm telling you, Brother Pfleger, we go back 35 years preaching in his church for 27 years on the south side of Chicago, strong as ever. And here comes Brother Christian himself with that family of artistic nobility from New Orleans. Indeed. Brother Pfleger, you want to give us just a real short little ecumenical prayer, brother? Because we start off in that spiritual, then of course Christian got insight, but then he's got the artistic thing with the music. Could you start with just a very little brief prayer though, brother?
Yeah, God, we come before you because we know you're the God of truth, and you're the God of justice, and you're the God of love. And we understand because you are God of truth, justice, and love that they win. And we must never become discouraged with the battle and with the fight, with the darkness or the evils or the attacks that come around us, understanding that the battle is already won, and ours is just to continue to pick up and fight and walk to the winning point to be our more than conquerors. So give us the strength, give us the vision, and continue to give us the courage. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So I just want to ask both of you, what are on your heart, minds, and souls today? This historic election moment.
Oh, Christian.
Yeah, I think for me, something that the Father spoke to, is about courage. And, so much of what we do is about creating courage. With the music that we create, we call stretch music, and more or less it's really about a reevaluation and sort of taking the time to sharpen the tools that are requisite to communicate effectively. And so, I think when we are, encroaching a moment, like this, I think, the hearts and minds of so many people, there's so much fear that is in the environment that a lot of times we don't take the time to actually give an accurate appraisal of all of the things that we have had the ability to walk through and to trespass and to move forward through. So, for us and for the work that I do, so much of it is wrapped around that reevaluation. And, it's in a very important junction in this moment artistically as well, because so many people are becoming intentional about decolonializing these spaces, right? And the type of work that's also requisite, to do that in a way that fosters light. And so, for me in this moment, it really just becomes about, doing the work that I have to do to make sure that the next generation of practitioners that come out of this culture, one, have an accurate depiction of where this music comes from, the utility of this music, and and its ability to help us communicate things, our humanity, in certain spaces where maybe you may be persona non grata, and to also, refine the tools and the means by which the next generation is going to do that. So, in the moment where we're walking into what's going on with the election, I think it's also very important for people to take the time that's requisite for them to sharpen the things that they need to sharpen to push this ball forward.
I want our listeners to hear that. Stretch music.
Yes, sir.
Music.
Yes, sir.
When you go to St. Sabina, you're going to get your soul stretched, your courage instilled. Brother Pfleger, what you want to say, my dear brother?
well, Doc, going on what Christian just said, I think we must be about making sure that we're empowering and uplifting those creators of the future, that they don't get overwhelmed or discouraged or heavied by this atmosphere that we're in right now and this darkness in our country. But at the same time, we say that I think we have to look at the real picture tonight. And I think this election to me is really much bigger than Trump or Biden. To me, this is a statement about America and where America is and who America is. And really, there's a sadness. And I think in a sense, no matter who wins tonight, America has already lost. And I say that because I think the fact that this is even a close race is a discouraging statement about the country. I think Donald Trump certainly did not begin racism in America. He made the racists comfortable. He emboldened them. He fueled them, and he allowed them to be comfortable in this country, being very public. But I think what he also did is expose the real America. And we've, under this pretense that America is this wonderful country and the land of the free and the home of the brave. And America is not. It's never been a good country. It's never been a great country. And I think he has exposed that to show us the real America. And now I think what we have to do is say, so what do we do about this? Now that we've seen this America, no matter who wins, the real work begins on tomorrow. And how do we empower, particularly our young people, to rise up now and decide what kind of America do we want? Forgetting whoever becomes the president is still Pharaoh in the seat. Our job is to say, how are we going to dismantle the systems that make America who it is and continue to keep people oppressed in this country? And I think that's the task before us. And understanding we can do that. That's the element of faith. As I've told you, Dr. West, many times, because of my faith, I'm a prisoner of hope. Hope wins, justice wins, love wins, truth wins. And we got to remember that. And then we go out and we fight. We must dismantle the systems that have been set up to continue this country as it is. And our work begins afterwards. But I think this election is a statement about who we are as America.
Yeah. Yeah. I also worry about, making sure that young people feel as though they have a voice and a sense of hope and possibility. And Christian, a lot of your, community work is incredibly powerful because it's not only sort of social justice work, it extends the role of the tradition of the arts in African American music and beyond to be a source of empowerment. Can you talk a little bit about your vision for that and how you are, what you're planning to do, particularly in New Orleans, where the music tradition is so rich and so important, and the resources on the ground have been so depleted?
Well, the work is really more of an extension of a cultural imperative that, I was sort of brought up in. My family, as Dr. West spoke about as well, I come from a space that, it's really unique American space in that my grandfather was a tribal chieftain, maybe arguably one of the most notable Black Indian chieftains of Louisiana. I was coronated as chief 4 years ago, and so I am now chief. And so most of the work that we're doing in this space is really, just an extension of the work that we have to do as community leaders. This is a group of people in a community that has, had to sort of exist in open rebellion to the American state since before it was America in that region. Right. And this is a community that continues that work, to try and make sure that the indigenous cultural arts stay alive. And so, it's just by happenstance that I ended up also becoming a practitioner in the creative improvised music or stretch music, the jazz culture of music. Obviously, being New Orleanian, that's not very difficult to do. You can pitch a rock and hit a great trumpeter. But I grew up in a household where, my grandfather was a chieftain and was, revered because of his unwillingness to yield as it related to procurement of the sort of resources that we need to get over the humps that we're speaking about this moment. But also, my grandmother, she runs a non-for-profit. For years before that, maybe 30, 40 years, she ran a nursery. So she also raised my community. So these are the examples that I'm seeing as a younger person. And so I think it would have been really difficult for me to become an adult and to grow into what I wanted to do as a creator and not also tether all of those other components to it. So, When I'm speaking about courage creation, when I'm speaking about, the utility of creative improvised music or jazz music and its ability to communicate these facets of our experiences and how dynamic those experiences are. When I'm speaking to all those things, it still ends up being an extension of my role as a tribal chieftain in New Orleans. And so, I know that even though that is one very specific culture, we have so many different versions of that in New Orleans. And so, my experience, none of this stuff is by accident. I'm a person that was a beneficiary of a lot of love and a lot of patience and a lot of conversations that made sure that I developed a critical thinking mechanism and conversations that made sure that I was susceptible to fact. And so that when I was in spaces speaking about certain things, that it wasn't conjecture and there were things that were coming up naturally from what I'm actually experiencing. And so, the work continues, but we're looking forward to tomorrow and the work that is going to continue in that moment in creating courage.
Brother Pfleger mentioned this issue of greatness and how there's a serious battle right now over what we understand greatness to be. Brother Pfleger's got a number of pictures right there behind him, and I've been blessed to be there many times, and they're nothing but just magnificently great folk, Martin King, Rosa Parks, and so forth. Brother Christian he talked about the exemplary great folk in New Orleans, great in terms of courage, compassion, service to the least of these, consistency and constancy, not because one is perfect or pure, but one is continually trying to keep the focus on truth, a focus on justice. What happens today, whichever way we go, in terms of that legacy of spiritual, moral, artistic, human greatness, not Alexander the Great, not Napoleon, not Genghis Khan. We're talking about real greatness in the deep sense.
Well, I think, Doctor, that one of the things is there has to be a reawakening of the faith communities. I blame the condition of our country mostly on the faith communities. When you talked about the greatness of a Dr. King or of a Malcolm X or of a Rosa Parks, and you look at that and you have to understand that Dr. King said, we must and we will pass laws to make racism wrong, to make segregation wrong, to make sitting at the back of the bus wrong and not being able to vote wrong. But he said it is the faith communities that must change the heart. We can't pass a law to change the heart. And until we change the heart of people and of this country, we are going to continue to be band-aiding the problems. And I think the faith communities on I
think we lost him there for a minute.
Oh, is he frozen there a little bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we might have lost him.
Okay, well, we'll wait for him to come back on this.
No, indeed. No, your brother Christian looked like you're about to finish his sentence, my brother.
Yeah, I want to wait for him to come back, but I think he raised something that's really, really thought-provoking in that, and for me, when I think about that, I always think about, someone says the faith-based communities, I think about what it is that we do, and jazz essentially being also a faith-based community, right? Because of what it has represented for so long. And so I think, when we're talking about what we are contributing, a component of that is also the artistic expression as an extension of faith-based communities, right? And, I think in a moment like this, also where we are also engaging with millennials and, the younger generation is coming up and coming into the fold in a moment where, their relationship to traditional faith-based communities may not be as linear. I think, the arts is also a way to connect those dots and to show people that, they are connected to something larger and that, you spoke about, people getting up every day willing to try, when we're speaking about faith-based, if you're on a bandstand, and you're playing at 300 BPM, playing Donnelly or something like that, you're going to have faith to get through those things, no matter how well you are prepared. The art, specifically with jazz music, is also designed in a way that challenges you to ascend into your greatest self. And so, hearing what it is that he's saying in that moment, I think he's absolutely right, but I would just like to pair that with the necessity of the artistic contribution being tethered to those things as also as a generational marker.
Right. That's a very profound connection, because it's not just churches or mosques or synagogues, right? But the notion of faith and also the unknowability, right? Of the kind of, when you listen to amazing music and you just have this feeling that you don't have words for. And there's a certain level of spirit involved there. But I wanted to make sure that I asked you about your March 2020 release of a live performance at the Blue Note in New York City called Axiom. I understand you recorded this last record, a few weeks before the shutdown, sometime in March 2020.
Yeah,
so tell us about the recording and why you called it Axiom and what the heck happened. Did you get out of the club all right? What happened?
Well, the recording, we had an amazing time doing it. We had no idea that what was going to, happen was going to happen. So we were in the middle of a run. The next week we were supposed to go to the Kennedy Center, and then the week after that we were supposed to be in Jakarta. And so, the band was really excited to record and document the record. And, so much of the music that we make in this moment has been sort of designed as sort of studio records. The templates have been designed with a bunch of layerings of, some of the West African instruments that you see behind me to sort of illuminate the harmony and the melody that exists in African music. And I say that to say, in the traditional definition of jazz, after it was codified as being America's classical music, there was an energy around making sure that it was labeled as equal parts West African rhythm and European harmony, which, for most of its practitioners, they found problems in that because it showed that someone felt that there were no harmonic traditions in West Africa, which obviously there are. If you go to Bamako, it's Burkina Faso, or any of these places and walk around and audit the creative spaces, you will hear music that sounds frighteningly similar to the Delta blues, right? If you're walking around in Mali, you hear stuff that sounds like Robert Johnson. And so we've been making records with that sort of mindset for the last 5 or 6 years. But I also wanted to make another live record. It had been maybe 6 or 7 years since we did one, and the energy is also very different in that. It's not something that's being created in a reservoir where things are being sharpened and edited, but it's actually what's happening in that moment. And because of what was going on in our country politically, what was going on socially and culturally in those moments, we saw that it was a necessary thing to create something that you could not divorce. It wasn't abstraction so much, right? It was something that was like, it happened in that moment. This is what we said. This is what's going on. When people listen to the record, I think at the end of the first song and on the recording, I speak to people and let them know, thank you for coming out. We want you to know that you are safe and you're free to express yourselves as long as you cover your mouth when you do it. So the reality of the virus was clear in that moment, and so we had to fight to continue to play in that space. But, for me, what I loved about documenting Axiom in that moment as well is you could hear the sense of urgency in that moment. Some of the stories and things that I say and I bring up about the compositions and the necessity of having compassion and seeing other people and realizing that anytime you engage with another person that you are looking in a mirror, right? And those sort of energies, to be able to actually say those things in a forum like that and to give that to people, walking into a moment where everyone was, had to go inside and to sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, hide from some of the things that were going on. I think that it was really important to make that document as a courage creating document. And so we had a good time.